You're rolling.
He likes to know. Kind of.
It's true.
So I'm going to do a little intro and introduce you guys.
So you're rolling, I'm just going to let it roll.
Awesome. Hi, this is Bella Vendetta. I am taking over Mel's podcast, No Boundaries. Super excited about it. I have with me today Courtney Treble and Chelsea Bowe, all the way from California. Came to visit and shoot porn and watch movies. So we're discussing today porn and academia, the intersect of both. I'd like to start with something that has been an issue for me way before I ever did college speaking, which is why everyone makes such a big deal of porn stars who have a degree. I feel like anytime someone does, it's like, whoever her name is has a degree in this. It's like has to be mentioned, and everyone oohs and ahs about the fact that they have this degree.
Yeah.
So why? What's up with that?
I mean, I guess there's been like this sort of stigma, particularly in America, about sex workers. I think that like sex work is something that's so degrading and so shameful that you only really get into it if it's like your last option. And of course, like in our world, like college is your first option. So I think it's like a really interesting like contrast of like the social stigma of sex work and like the status symbol of college. That like somebody with a status symbol like college could also be like this like shameful underground creature of the night. Like,
it's like amazing. And anytime a porn star does anything not porn, they have to be like, porn star Bella Vendetta went grocery shopping and whatever the thing is. They make such a big deal of it.
Yeah.
But I always was like very taken aback about how important it was for people to talk about college degrees.
Yeah.
I shot for sh.com and they had ABC come and have a reporter there who wanted to talk to us about porn stars with college degrees, and they went around the room and were like, do you have one, do you have one? And they got to me and I said, I dropped out of college, but I teach at college now. And she was like, not interested. That was not on the menu. So I get looked over a lot because of that.
I have 2 degrees, kind of. I went to community college instead of high school, so I ended up with a high school degree and an AA. See, this is how smart I am. I got an associate's degree when I was 17, and then I went and did 2 years of a 4-year and got a BA. But it was all art, so it was all photography, basically.
So you're using your degree in your porn career.
Pretty much, yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I'm like, I have 2 degrees, but I'm not academic in any sense of the word, and that's been like my biggest hurdle with doing academic porn stuff, because the first time I taught a workshop at a college was literally like 12 years ago. The second I started making porn, I started running colleges.
Cool.
And like conferences and stuff. But like for me, the big hurdle has been like, I'm actually not an academic. Like a lot of what I've learned about like porn or like the things that, or sex, or like the things that the kids want to know and the things that the professors want to know, they've already read in books. So like for me, not having like the same kind of background, like teaching porn to a class, like a women's studies class, is like really awkward for me because like I didn't have that education at all. So it's interesting. I mean, like a degree can mean a lot.
Yes. Yes. Did you go to college?
I went for a semester, dropped out of community college.
To pursue porn or totally independent?
More, I failed a bunch of classes because I'm like, I don't want to grow up yet right after high school. But I feel like people take porn stars way too seriously, not seriously enough. Yeah. Where people write you off if you're like not trying to be super academic, then if you are, they're like, you're such a genius, that you're a Rhodes Scholar. And it's like, the thing that people really don't pay attention to is what porn stars actually have to say, I feel like, about the industry, and they just write it off.
Yes.
So I think that's a huge issue where they want to hear us speak and be like, oh, porn's this huge empowering thing. But then when there's any critique of it, the entire community shuts itself in. It's like, nope, it's fine. We're all perfect. We're all happy.
Yes. That's a really good point. It happens a lot. Like, if any of us have anything bad to say about the industry, it turns really quick into, see, the industry's bad and you're all being abused.
Yeah.
It's like the one sex work is the one job you are not allowed to complain about. Otherwise, it's, you know, anyone can come home from a bang and be like, I had a really shit day. There's a lot of rude people.
Yeah.
But if you're a sex worker and you come home and you're like, I had a really shit day, that was bad, the sex was bad, people are like, you should really get out of the industry.
Oh, it's so heartbreaking.
But like it's like any industry, it's open to critique it should be open to critique from within itself, so it can change for the better. But I feel like so much of porn is so stuck on this is the way it's done and this is the way it's always been done, even though this current model it's in is relatively new because of the internet. But no one's open to critique or really change, and I feel like that's what academics should really be looking at and saying, oh, we should listen to these performers who want to speak up instead of just being like, we just want to hear them say the same old spiel of saying, you're a smart porn star, good for you.
Yeah, a lot of times they just have so many questions about sex. Like the students, like I'll be there for anything. Like I do speeches on feminism. I do speeches on like queer porn. Like I do speeches that are like particularly like my story about gender identity. You know, a lot of different things, but like it's never sex ed. But the Q&A comes around and it's always sex ed. Like how do you fist? How do you squirt? Like I want to start doing BDSM. Like all these questions that these like kids have. They're like children, 18, 19, 20 years old.
I'm always completely blown away at the fact that these 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old kids know so little about sex. Whenever they ask me questions, I'm like, oh, God.
I know, so that's always my first question when I do college stuff is like, what was your sex education like? And like, you know, half of these freshmen, this is the first time they're ever hearing the word genderqueer, the word bisexual, or like whatever, you know, like they just don't even know. Our like U.S. system of sex education for teenagers is absolutely horrible, which is why I think
just,
like
went through that in the last 5 years. You know,
it's
like ridiculous.
So I love going to schools and just like being. I mean, it's kind of cool. Like I get to be like the first queer people, like queer person these people really get to know. Although I'm not a sex educator, like
well, you are though.
I'm not. Like, I'm a trendsetter. Yeah, I'm a
you are a sex
trendsetter. But like,
educator.
yeah.
Do you feel weird about that label if someone?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't feel like I'm. I mean, yeah, I'm just not. But that's I don't actually like really connect to the world of academia or the world of education whatsoever. I have my degrees, however I scammed them out of my life, you know. But like, yeah, it's just not a status symbol that I've particularly sought after. I see myself like mainly as an artist. You know, it'd be cool if like art people were like, hey, Courtney Trouble, you should come to the college and talk about being the business person around your art, because that's what I do. I make a living off of my photographs. And like, that's really awesome, but because my work is sexual, I only ever get to speak to the queer group or like the women's studies group. And it's just always about explicit sex. It's never about photography, it's never about art. It'll be about like queer politics for sure, but like, yeah, it's just weird how like I'm only allowed to do porn in those situations. Like,
I just got to speak at Beth Israel Teaching Hospital to a group of social workers, which was really different because they're older, you know, they've gone through college, and they had great questions and were super open-minded. And when I said like a lot of sex workers don't have an option, it's really hard to find a therapist that will be open-minded, and everyone like immediately raised their hand and was like, really? People won't talk to sex workers? No. And they had a woman on the panel with me, Anita Hoffman, who was great. She was wonderful. But she's not a sex worker. She's talking, and that's why they invited me, because I said, you're having someone talk about sex workers. Why don't you have a sex worker talk about sex work? Which is something that does not happen very often.
That's the really nice thing about the academic work that I've been getting, is that I am a sex worker, and so they are getting like a direct voice, which is good. I have also walked into academic situations where professors have literally stripped me from my voice. Like, I recently like went to Canada, went to this really prestigious university. You know, I had this sold out screening. I did this huge talk. You know, it was like a real big event, and like the conservative mainstream radio talk show wanted to cover it. So it's sort of like a Rush Limbaugh situation. I didn't get to go on it. Like the professor who was somehow loosely connected to these kids who arranged me coming, basically took my media slot and like was like, yeah, I think the college thinks that I would do a better job of representing you than you would.
I would do a better job
of like, really?
Sex work than a sex
yeah.
Like, yeah, that's great.
So that kind of sucked. I don't, like, sometimes I don't know if academia like really sees me as like a valuable asset to the education of their children, or if it's like, a shock and awe situation.
Yeah.
You know?
That's so. My next question is, you know, you've been doing this. You said for 12 years. You've been speaking at colleges, which I actually did Rutgers very early on in my career too, and that was a big deal. But then there was a lull for like many years, and now it's this big booming thing.
Yeah.
What happened? Like, what changed that is suddenly making everyone want to have all these porn folks come into colleges and speak?
I think you're seeing like porn stars who are being vocal, but they're white and privileged, so they can't
All of
be.
them, yeah.
Like Stoya and Sasha Grey and like even James Dean, where people are like, oh, I really like this porn star, it's not some taboo thing. But like, I feel like with my porn's activism through the lens of porn, just like, you know, Rage Against the Machine is politics through the medium of like music, where, I don't know, I've done a few speaking things at colleges and stuff as a trans person, and it was like secondary as a sex worker, and I feel like all the sex work questions are never really about my politics. It's just about like, oh, so how do you fist? How do you do this? And I feel like it's almost like missing the point of a lot of the reason why a lot of us do porn, instead of being like, so what are your politics behind all this?
Yeah, it's not
the
fully
important
tapped
questions
in.
people should be asking.
Yeah,
like,
because
why
it's
do you
not.
do this?
Yeah, because my porn's not just about like fucking. It's about everything behind it. And it's just through the medium of porn.
It's so worth it for the students, though. Like,
Yeah, it's great. I mean, that's how I got into this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell the story of how you met Jisley at a college.
Well, so I like woke up. This is when I was camping back in Michigan. I woke up at like 3:30, and I got a camp like right away, like right when I woke up. Someone hit me up for one. So I was just like, I went to get food at this college that was right near where I lived, and I saw this poster for Jisley, and I'm like, oh my god. So I went like an hour early, so I was like sitting outside. I was like tweeting about it like an hour early. And so like I get in there and Jiz is like, oh, do you know where a bathroom is? I'm like, sure. So I'm like, I want to talk to Jisley. But I had no clue where a bathroom was, so we went through like the entire college trying to find a bathroom. And I saw the screening, and I watched Crash Pad a bunch of times before, and I was thinking about applying, but just seeing it in like person, everything just made me really want to do porn. So I weirdly got a picture with Jiz that day, and that's like my first introduction to queer porn. So it was like
Jiz does a pretty good job when they speak of talking about the politics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was like 5 months later. It was my first shoot, and then I moved to the Bay Area. I think 10 months after I first saw that. So
Super porn.
yeah. So
how long has it been?
Since that it's been about 2 years now.
Oh wow.
Since I like saw them, but see, I've only lived in the Bay for about a year now, so it's been full time for about a year.
Porn full time for a year?
Just about, yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So are you gonna keep going?
Yeah, definitely.
I can't wait to see what happens.
She's just now starting to go out and go to film festivals.
It's different.
I feel like
been a
she's gonna be
whirlwind
like
this
one of
year.
the people at academia tap into.
Yeah.
The thing about it is that you kind of like, for me, I did, I don't know, the University of Arizona, and then you know, people saw that I did the University of Arizona, and then like the University of Calgary was contacting me, and then it just kind of snowballed. It's almost like like when you're involved in film festivals, like they all know each other, and like they're like, well, what worked for you? Oh, Quarter Trouble, okay, great, cool, we'll bring that, you know, like not too abrasive, awesome.
Know someone.
Yeah.
It's really
Yeah,
hard to-
but then
to
once you
cold
do one or two, you can kind of get on a loop for a couple of years. I mean, I guess I thought I was on a couple year loop, but I've been doing academic stuff for like almost a decade now.
Wow.
My favorite things to do are workshops. They're hard, but like, and instead of like acting like in the role of an academic or a philosopher or something, it's just so much more. I think it's so much more connective to like actually like give the students a chance to like design the time with me for what they need. Like, do they need to know about sex? Do they need to know about porn? Like the politics behind it all. And I think the most rewarding things have definitely been, I do a speech that was actually printed in the academic journal Porn Studies about how doing indie porn performance really helped me form my gender. As a non-binary person, there's just not a whole lot of examples of like a femme non-binary queer person out there.
Outside of porn.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
like, you know, I've like put on a lot of hats, and like, so I have this awesome piece in the academic journal, and when I say it out loud at colleges, like there's just more than anything else I do, this is when people come up to me crying and just be like, oh my god, I'm gay. Like, this is like the thing that reaches people, is just like this really personal story, you know. And I'm totally different than those kids. I grew up poor. I didn't get a scholarship to a nice college like they did. Like, I'm never experienced what they're experiencing, but like for some reason, like that connection of just being able to talk personally
Because
about
they've
it.
never probably heard it before.
Yeah, never
Real life
ever,
person's mouth.
never ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that it's to have like a real direct effect on like queer youth is like, that's kind of the only way I can do it, because I'm definitely like not allowed to like go work at a queer youth group, you know, like I'm not allowed into spaces.
Yeah, like
generally.
how hypocritical is that?
Yeah.
If it, you know, if we weren't,
I can come and be a
talking
spectacle,
about
but I
porn,
couldn't actually
yes.
be a teacher.
you can come be a
Yeah.
spectacle and be like interviewed and ask really personal questions.
Really personal questions.
Because I always say to people, I'll answer anything,
Oh,
and if
your
I don't want to, I'll just
parents
say I
think-
don't want to answer it. But that's never
Yeah.
actually happened. I've always answered. And of course,
Yeah.
someone wants to know what do your parents think.
Yeah.
How do you navigate relationships? This and that. Like really personal questions.
Yeah.
And that's okay. But if we were gonna like help the students in any way or show up to a fundraiser or an event, we would not be kosher. It would not be cool to be
Well, the
there.
weird thing
Yeah.
about that is, like, I've totally had. I feel like the trans community is really different with porn.
Yeah.
Because it's such a, like, the only representation we have. So, like, I've totally been involved with, like, trans youth things out as a sex worker and shit. So I think it's really different for especially trans women. Because porn is such a, it's the only place we have really visibility in our view as anything even close to being equal. So I think it's really different.
And the community's so small, it's like they will accept what they can get as far
Exactly,
as
like I know there's underage trans kids watching my porn, and it's like something that it's just kind of part of the porn you make, and you're like, just try to make really good positive representation. Because I know there's going to be 13-year-old trans women who are trying to figure out their gender, and my porn could be one of the first things they see of it, you know? I feel like that's why it's so positive. That's why it's so important to try to push for positive change in porn, especially trans porn, because I don't know, I just know it's affecting those people who are trying to come to terms with their gender, who are stuck in Iowa or Michigan or whatever, you know, because I was one of those people. Like, queer porn's really
Yeah,
helped
you're
me.
like our hero.
I'm from them though, like,
Yeah.
I went back to Michigan, I get recognized as a skate bar a lot, I always went to. It's always like, oh, why are you here?
You're
I'm
like, this is my song.
I know, I'm like, I went here 3 times a week for like the last year. But I don't know, I feel like, especially for the trans community, we need a lot of trans women who are not afraid to speak out about who they are sexually, and I feel like there needs to be more trans women getting academic gigs as far as speaking about doing sex work and porn.
Yeah, I wish there was.
I mean, it's kind of interesting and kind of cool in a way that like porn stars have become the sex educators.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and I mean, it like goes to just, like we're not equipped to train people about sex. Like we like having sex in front of the camera. That doesn't mean that we all know how to do it safely,
Yeah, exactly.
or we all know how to do it like the right way or whatever. And it's just like, you know, we're sort of being tapped into to provide the service that needs to be available to all youth, you know, like 18, 19, 20, that's like a really important age for people to be learning about their sexuality, and it shouldn't just rely on performers who are making a living off of having sex on camera, like,
Yeah.
you know,
But I feel like so many kids that age, that's where they get their sex education
Yeah.
from porn.
Porn.
Not just kids
Yeah.
though, everyone.
Everyone, yeah,
I
you're
mean,
right.
yeah.
All ages. Yeah, it's
And that's why this whole like thing that a lot of porn producers say is like, don't worry about the content, it's just a fantasy. And
Yeah, no,
it's
I
not.
know.
It
I don't
affects
know,
real life.
everybody thinks it's a fantasy. Yeah.
Because it affects real life, whether it's a fantasy or not, just like a movie.
Yep, that's right.
You know, it's all part of our culture.
My least favorite thing is when people say porn sex is not real sex. Like, get really upset when that happens.
Yeah.
Like,
It's just like different.
it's just different. What I like to say is, if someone's playing like professional football and the NFL, it looks very different than the football you play in your backyard. That doesn't mean that this football is any less real than this one.
I really like a comparison because especially like with other porn performers, I feel like I have like the most intense sex because like you know that both of you are like capable of that, you know.
Yeah,
where it's not like you with someone else who you might have to hold something back because you're like, you know.
For the most part, the sex I have on film is the sex I'm having in my personal life. I don't do that much different except for like open my legs a little better so you can get a better view or something. But
I do totally different things in porn than I do in like my like married life. But it's pretty. It's definitely like pretty real to like the sex that I have outside my marriage. But, it's definitely like super important for me that like queer sex is being seen in colleges and like, like it's interesting to be like, okay, porn isn't education, but like, you know, everything I do have in the back of my mind like, okay, I'm an artist, I want to be edgy, I want to do something messy and dangerous. But at the same time, I know that these kids are watching me, and I do feel like sort of like the responsibility to be like safe, and it's that academic interest for sure that like keeps me on my toes.
Part of the awesome thing about your work and queer porn in general, though, is that unlike seeing like a mainstream porn scene where this is it, you don't get the talk beforehand, and you don't get the consent issues, and you don't get the boundary issues. And with queer porn, that's like really prevalent and really important for people to see.
But I also feel like with queer porn, it can go to this really deep level, and this really hardcore level that you don't see in mainstream porn. I mean, I feel like when I do mainstream shoots, it's almost like, okay, you're gonna do like 75% of your fantasy.
And they tell you to hold that.
Yes.
Right? And with queer porn, it's like I get to do the most fucked up shit that I can think of and be like, yeah, I want to do a 10-person gangbang. And I just do it, you know? Where with mainstream porn, they're like, well, what's gonna sell? You need to think of this. You're playing a role. You can't have bruises. You can't do this. And I like totally get that, and I respect that. But at the same time, I think queer porn is what I'm doing that's the most real to me, and the most real and authentic to my sexuality. And I love that's always gonna be something I'm gonna have.
Screening hardcore porn in college settings has been one of the most rewarding situations in my life. Like, particularly, like, I got to show trans girls at the University of Calgary, which is like an incredibly conservative school. Like, it's so square. And I got to show the whole thing, including fisting, you know? So, like, showing this, like, radical, underground, subversive, trans, lesbian, danky, genderqueer, like, totally punk rock porno, like, in its entirety, like, and I got, you know, Canadian government money for this, too. Awesome. It doesn't, like, the punk in me is like, ha-ha, I have made it, I am now, like, the fucking, like, Robin Hood. I am now Robin Hood, this is awesome. And also just like being able to like sort of subvert these really conservative spaces, and like have these really positive experience with kids who are in these conservative situations, and especially people who've grown up privileged or who've grown up with money and like are attracted to like a punk aesthetic, but they don't know why, and they realize that it's like this queer underground thing that they're really attracted to, and it kind of takes them out of their shell, it takes them out of their bubble, and like there's some real work being done, like with me in a college specifically around class, and sort of just like a lot of privilege is being fucked by me being in that space.
Awesome.
So I mean, I take every opportunity. I've like, you know, gone to the middle of Canada in the middle of February to like tell 10 kids how gay I am. Like, and that's like, and they were so grateful, you know? So I keep doing it. Like, I have sort of dropped off the ball of like really prescribing to like the feminist porn movement or like labeling what I do as like anything other than art. Because like, you know, I'm a brat about politics and always will be, but like, I'm an artist. You know, like, I'm not an academic, I'm not a writer, like, those aren't the things that really call to me, like, I want the image, and so to be accepted into spaces and have my images, have, like, a profound academic thing to, like, these rich kids is positive, and it's worth a lot of the bullshit that, like, kind of comes along with it.
I mean, even if they're rich, I mean, there's still this thing in the Midwest where you're stuck there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
no,
you can have as much money as you want, and you're
Yeah.
still, like, stuck there. So you're, like, so, like, confined to these social standards and everything. Where I feel like it's so important that we're showing queer porn.
well, there's a lot of different reasons why somebody would end up in like an Ivy League college or university. Like some of the bigger places I've been, like I did a thing at Northwestern where every single kid who was there was like, did not understand my life at all.
Northwestern.
Like, but then there was somebody who had a scholarship and was like, they're just like so different than the rest of the kids.
Yeah.
And that was a really powerful experience. It was being like, cool, I'm here for you. And like everybody else kind of gets a picture of it. It's like being able to just be a human being who's also a porn star and just being, it's a very humanizing, like equalizing
that's
thing.
a good word for it, because it is. It's like very validating.
It's,
to talk
people
about
talk
sex
about
work
it.
as real work. It's so real, we'll pay you to talk about it.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, feminists like say like porn is objectifying and you know, for me to like actually be a person in front of the people and be like, how can porn exactly be objectifying when I am here as a person, as a subject in front of you? Like, I'm not an object. Who is doing the objectifying here?
Yes.
Like, if you think I'm an object, that doesn't make sense. I'm standing right in front of you. Like, you know. So it's really cool to like definitely change the perception of porn and porn stars to the guys and the girls. They're like a real, you know, the guys who come are just like, or they're like, I'm really ashamed about my porn usage, and this is like, just like, it's okay.
Right?
You know, the guys kind of work out their guilt issues, and you know, I've had like sorority girls come to my events and be like, hey, like my sorority sister got raped. Like this is the shit that they come to me with, like, and I haven't talked to anybody about it, but like for some reason you seem like a safe person.
Because you just outed yourself as a safe person who's not judgmental. And,
exactly.
And that's hard to come by, especially in a college, especially surrounding sexual assault. So, it's awesome that the Canadian government pays you to be there. This is something I wanted to bring up because pay for these gigs is varying across the board.
It's true.
Like drastically.
I have gone somewhere and not gone paid.
I've done
$0 to $2,000 has been my range.
So what's the range? There's no like
0 to
standard rate for this.
Yeah, it depends on who brings you in. If a professor has a lot more budgeted money to bring you in, an established group like the women's studies group, like the women's center, if the college has one, is a lot where a lot of the resources is for the bigger speaks.
Yes.
If the school has a sex week, some schools have porn weeks now, so you know all of the feminist pornographers go to that. there's even a white feminist pornographers conference that people go to at a college.
It's pretty crazy being like, I dropped out of school, but my porn is being shown like
I think
colleges all over the world and stuff. Like, it's crazy.
What is your degree in? I'm like, I dropped out of this. I was in college and I was working as a pro dom, and I was like, I'm making $300 an hour. With this degree, I'm going to be making $200 an hour. What am I doing here? I'm dropping out. So I don't know if that's the best advice to give everyone, but
don't drop out. Stay in school.
Drop out of your porn. Yes.
I make more money at college speaking gigs than I do in a porn gig.
I like to say that I make more money talking and writing about porn than
I
ever made
actually doing it.
It's sad, actually. It makes me feel sad inside, but it is what it is. I mean, I also, when I spoke at Beth Israel, Gail Dines had just been there, and
kids had lots of confusing questions.
They had lots of confusing questions, and I said, you know, so Gail Dines is telling you how bad the porn industry is, but she's making money more than I am to be here today to talk to you about porn. So who's making money off whose back? Who is taking advantage of who?
Yeah.
That's disgusting to me. If she cared so much about saving us, she would donate that money to a sex workers outreach program, or she would not accept any money at all because she's there to spread the word
give it
out.
To a sex worker.
Yeah, exactly. So it's always
good point.
Yeah, I said that to them. They all went, and I looked at the guy who's paying me. I know I'm getting way less than she did. But that's okay. We'll talk about that when you re-invite me next year. Yeah, I do like to do that. The ones that I really like, I like to take for a low price, and then if it goes great, and they invite me back saying, I'd love to, I can't do it for $75, but.
I think my absolute favorite experience was not.
Tell us why feminist porn is good and all other porn is bad.
That's like my biggest comment.
It's my most common.
And they hate my answer.
Is it true that everyone in mainstream porn is sexually trafficked and on drugs?
No.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean,
I used to say all porn was ethical, and then I read Grover.
All right.
So I do
you're
kind
rolling.
of have to change my stream on that a little bit because it's not. We were just talking about the conversation about like how academics and like just people in general. The first question is like, what is the difference between good porn and bad porn? Or like, what is the difference between like how do you know something is ethically made? And it's just it's always comes as a shock to me that like for some reason I'm held at this much higher standard than like any of the other like sex workers who are working in other fields of the porn industry, and about how brainwashed like young feminists, and I hate to say this, but like these young feminists are like kind of brainwashed, and in a way that benefits me financially because they are like, well, Trouble Films is an ethical, good porn company. We'll give them our money and we're going to steal from Evil Angel. But it's just like, like those people are not inherently bad people. Like it's also like
very different.
I
their
think
job,
that Evil
you
Angel
know,
is an incredibly ethical set. It's one of the best sets I've ever been on.
I like to
you
talk
know?
about that too. Like, I've been on some big mainstream sets that are
And they're
great.
great.
Way more ethical than
Yeah.
any queer porn set
Way
I've
more,
ever done.
yeah. Like as far as like money per hour goes, I don't know, but like for what you're getting, you know, it's a nice experience to be on a mainstream porn set, and like, you know, young feminists have sort of been taught by like this new wave of feminist porn that there's like a difference between mainstream porn and what like Chelsea and I make, and there's really not, and it's not necessarily in their favor or our favor. It's just like it's just different, and that I think that people hate that is my answer. Yeah,
Well,
they do hate it.
I feel like the problem is that people are trying to separate, and they're like, feminist porn's good, mainstream porn's bad, and not being like, what can we change with both of them to make it positive for everyone?
Yeah. They just want to do away with it. They just like want to do away with porn, and
it's
just
like,
not gonna happen. It's not realistic.
Yeah. Also, like this whole idea that I've seen a lot of this with trans inclusion, where it's like, well, these sites who are using these terms or whatever, or excluding trans people, we need to take money away from them, so they fail, so they're not around anymore. That's not right. Like this whole idea that capitalism is going to win. It's like no one should be going without like paychecks.
Who
Like,
said
it's
that
bullshit.
the answer to bad porn is not no porn, it's more porn?
It's
Yeah.
Andy Sprinkle said it.
Yeah.
I love that. It's so true.
I think she said it better porn actually,
Better
which
porn.
I would just say more porn.
Me too.
I'm like I don't see my porn as inherently better than anybody else's.
I
It's
don't
just
either.
a different
Maybe you
audience.
like to see a blonde woman get a cum shot to the face. That's fine. You shouldn't be shamed for wanting to see that. And if she's the blonde woman who wants that to happen to her, she's not any less feminist than I am for doing that.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a tricky subject. People like to bring up an awful lot too, and they always want you to make what's the difference? What's the big difference?
I really love
$2,000.
going.
Yeah, like I'm shooting mainstream porn now because I can. Like, let's be real here. Like, it's.
I you know have a like as an independent artist, it's like, yeah, where is this next big porn scene gonna come from? How am I gonna fund this movie? How am I gonna fund this project? And like, it's definitely like, ooh, college gig. I can make half a movie.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And it's nice to be in those spaces and be able to talk about like why do mainstream porn stars make more money than me for Crash Pad or the people who shoot who work for me, and it's a nice opportunity to be able to talk about like, well, what is a decent hourly wage for these situations, and like how much does it cost to be a mainstream porn star? Like how much does the surgeries cost? How much does the makeup and the hair? And like when you show up to a queer porn set, you don't even have to shave your legs. Like you don't have to do anything. There's like literally no financial investment in doing queer porn
today
whatsoever.
for the shoot. I'm like looking, I'm like, I don't have to wear corsets. I don't have to wear heels. This is it. I'm wearing my
Yeah.
Yeah.
So actually, the output of queer porn is interesting. It's about $100 an hour, sometimes more.
Yeah.
And it's like it's a quick day, and you don't have to invest in any costumes or makeup or any of the surgeries or stuff that you would need to maybe get considered for the work. So it's really nice to be able to go into academic spaces and be able to talk about like what it means to be a working artist, as well as instead of just and like seeing porn not just as this like thing that's so shameful that the people who do it you know are stigmas, and they are also very rich. Like it's this fantasy, you know, like
Absolutely.
there's
A lot of them aren't really rich anyway.
Yeah.
I know, not at all.
Even if you're getting
Not at all.
$2,000 for a senior agent, got 15% of that,
Yeah.
and you just spent
Yeah.
probably a couple hundred getting ready. You also
Yeah.
spent a couple hundred on your test, and if you're
Yeah.
lucky you've got a grand left over, which
Yeah.
in LA isn't taking you very far.
No.
No. So it is the academic stuff is a nice opportunity to be like, hey, I know that this all looks really underground, but like we're legit. Like
Yeah.
we know what we're doing. We're not trying to think beyond.
Yeah, I mean, we're punk though, so I like that queer porn. It's always like that whole underground punk vibe.
I shoot in my house.
Yeah, we're shooting in my friend's house.
Yeah, it's great. It's fun. It's about porn.
It's nice to burst the bubble a little bit.
Yeah.
Like
We don't like staying glamorous ourselves when we travel. It's like sleep
Never.
on some like
Couches.
Never.
yeah, on someone's couch. It's great. It's like being in a band again.
Yeah.
story.
Awesome. Thank you both so much.
Yeah, thank you.
This was awesome.
I think we should do a college panel together.
We should.
Yeah, let's do it.
Thank you, Mel, for letting me take over your show.
Thank you,
And
Mel.
thank you everyone
Thank
for
you.
listening.
Bye.